This podcast network.
The champion, welcome, Danny Batten.
Hey guys, it's Sunday and it is fight night here on A.C.E Podcast Nation. Welcome to the home of the Danny Batten Fight Show. This is episode number 98, and tonight we will be talking a big weekend of MMA, a bit of boxing, and a bit of everything. We'll also be speaking to a world champion and a former world champion, if he can hold it together. But of course, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, A.C.E Podcast Nation, your home to many great shows and series featuring top guests, expert analysts, and more. So please do follow us on social media. Click the bell for notifications, subscribe, and if you prefer your podcasts in audio form, check them out. Check all of our shows out, including the Fight Show, on the Sports Social Podcast Network, the UK's first dedicated sports podcast network. And you can check out all our previous shows and exclusive interviews with the likes of Mighty Mouse Johnson, Arjun Bouleur, heavyweight champion of the world, and many, many others. But joining me, as ever, is former Cage Warriors champion, UK MMA legend, Danny the Footlong Batten. How goes it, my friend?
Yeah, I'm liking that name more than the legend bit. That Footlong, just so apt for me.
It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm really good. And I know we're going to talk about it a little bit or briefly later, but my God, I think I probably witnessed the most high-level modern-day MMA fight ever. Let's talk about it later.
Let's go. But we are joined again by Cage Warriors Featherweight champion of the world, Jordan The Epidemic Vucenic, and one would say the one featherweight champion of the Cage Warriors, the real, the OG, is it? How are you?
Yes, I'm all good. Even better seeing you, sir.
That's always good, mate.
Of course.
Always good. We always have a bit of fun, but I'm glad to have you back, mate. I appreciate you finding the time from your busy schedule. You know, the champ, high flying these days, jetting around, doing all this stuff.
Yeah, you know.
Busy man. You're a busy man.
Busy man. Yeah.
So before we dig into you a bit, I wanted to ask you. So I wanted to get your side of something actually, because I feel like it's got an important message to it and an important side to it. Obviously, a couple of months back, you gave Mr. Daniel Batten a motor vehicle. And I kind of wanted to just hear your side of that story, because Danny sort of told us a bit about it. And it was very heartwarming and stuff like that. But I kind of wanted to hear your side of it, simply because I think it was just awesome. I think it was an awesome thing that you did. And I'd like to shoot.
Just give Danny my beloved Audi. He's done a lot for me, and like I said to him, I wouldn't be in the position I am to get the things I get without him and his help. So It was just a small token of everything that he's done for me, sort of thing. I've got plenty more to give him. When we get to the UFC, I'm going to buy him a lot more things, but I can't say on camera what those things are.
Oof. Wow.
But I just
wow.
remember a while ago him saying about it was a nice car and all this, blah, 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 when I first got it. And I remember he saying to me, oh, blah, 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 if you ever sell it, I'll buy it from you and all that stuff. And then, I obviously got sponsored a car. So, just phoned Danny. I said, look, do you want my car? He said, oh, maybe. How much do you want for it? I said, no, you can have it. And I don't think he believed it when I said it, but like I said, he deserves it, and I know he'll look after it. So why not?
Absolutely, I will. Yeah,
I think it's awesome, and I think it's a good message for anybody watching, anybody at the start of their career in whatever they're doing, not just fighting, anything. Like, you should remember the people who help you when you're at the bottom, and as you're moving up through the world domination in whatever field you do. You should remember those people who helped you get there, because and we'll touch on it a little bit, because I can't remember for definite, but I think you haven't kind of been on since we changed up the format a little bit. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit, so some of our newer viewers could kind of hear the story of how you got into MMA and martial arts and things like that, and why you got into it, maybe, and also how you met Danny, I suppose. I'll have to chuck that in there as well.
I suppose.
What you want me to go now? Just say
mate. Where did it begin for you? Like, how did you go? Where did you start with your martial arts and combat sports and stuff like that?
Well, I was probably the kid in school that people didn't really like, because I was good at any sport I sort of put my hand to, whether it be football, rugby, whatever. Even if we were playing badminton or anything like that, I was quite good at sort of everything. And I was always getting into fights and that when I was younger, all the time, but always getting beat up because I was dead small. So I'd always be fighting bigger guys and be getting my head punched in and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. And I seen Junior Dos Santos years and years ago randomly just come up on Related on YouTube, and I started watching it, and I seen how he won the UFC world title, but I didn't know what that was at the time. I just seen that he won this belt, and as soon as I watched him fight in the cage, I got dead obsessed with it, and I thought, I don't even know what it is, but I want to do that. And then as you get older, you learn that it's MMA, and then I found out a gym done it in Corby, and I went into the gym, and I sort of realised quite quickly that they weren't a gym that would take you sort of to a world level. It was just more of a hobbyist gym. So, that was me. I went on the old hunt to find my gym that was going to take me to that world-class level, and then I eventually ended up with this man in the middle, Danny. And, it was funny because I was 14-0 when I would come to Danny's gym every couple of months and spar and get my head punched in. And this one time I come and I did 5 rounds and I lost all 5 rounds, and I was sitting because I thought I was the boy, so I was sitting in the cage at the end, gutted, and he started having a mad go at me, started shouting at me like, blah, blah, blah. You take 2 steps forward, we take 5, blah, 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 and just proper shut me down. And I remember thinking in my head, I'm gonna fucking show you, you fucking bastard. And then I just stuck with them, and my very first fight I had with them, I lost. But I remember in my head, nope, I'm just gonna keep on keeping on, and I'm gonna prove that I know how good I can be. And then the rest is history. And now I've got the Cage Warriors world title, and I'm going to be coming for that UFC one sooner or later.
Absolutely, mate. And I think I believe it, mate. I gotta be honest, but
no, I genuinely do believe it. I've always said it, and I genuinely do believe it. I've got that willingness to learn, and I've got that natural ability, and I genuinely do think that even my next fight back, it's going to be a completely different Vucenic in there. People are going to be like, oh shit, like this guy's for real, like someone's going to be getting knocked out or put to sleep.
It's interesting because one thing which, when we've spoken to different coaches, when I spoke to Mighty Mouse, when you speak to these people who've got this vast knowledge and experience of the game, one thing they always say is that every fight you have, you learn something, you come back a different fighter for the next fighter, you're better every time. But also, they all say you learn so much more from a loss. And you mentioned, you lost that first fight and you haven't kind of looked back since. But how is, obviously the last fight you had was a barnstormer, and you've been injured. Like, how are you feeling now? Do you feel like you're ready to get stuck in again?
Better than ever. The sort of breaking my thumb gave me a long time out to focus on all the little things I need to improve, and there's always going to be things that need addressing, but we've addressed a lot of them issues, and again, still now to this day we're addressing a lot of things. Danny's hounding me at training to get all these finer key little details, and when they're together I know that it's just going to make the whole piece a better puzzle. So I'm happy and I'm looking forward to it, and I know for a fact that when I get back in there, it's going to be like big performances are going to come where people are going to be like, fucking hell, you need to break your hand more often if this is what's going to do it. Yeah.
So, like, how did you feel? And you don't have to answer this, obviously. I put you on the spot a little bit. Like, how did you feel when you found out they was going to do a interim title? Because to me, and this is only my opinion, I think there's, like, in the UFC, there's too many interim titles. Like, I understand that if someone's out long term, like it's 6 months or more, I kind of get it then. But it feels like these days they are kind of, UFC is just like, if someone's not fighting in the next card, they just chuck a interim title in there. Like, how did you feel as the champion when they kind of, because Cage Warriors is not really known for doing the interim thing. Like, how did you feel when they sort of threw that up?
I knew something like that was going to happen because I'm not the big cash cow on that show. These other two guys are, the Paul Hughes and the Sharia. So I knew something like that was going to happen. I just know that if they don't sort of use me while they've got me, when I'm gone, they'll regret it. Because when I get onto the worldwide scene, I'm going to make a big statement and they're going to be like, fuck, we missed a trick with him on our show.
I believe it, mate. I believe it. Like, what did you think of Hughes versus Sharia?
I went and watched it live. I thought it was a good fight. But again, I've just improved that much that I just think that I was levels above both of those guys that were in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you've beaten both. And you beat them both. And I think, like, obviously the Hughes fight was, in my opinion, one of the great British MMA fights. It was quality, unbelievable. The Sharia fight, I just thought you won quite comfortably. I don't think again, it's my opinion, but like, I didn't think he really troubled you a lot. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, but you know what? Even watching the Hughes fight back, I'm so much better than I showed in that fight. And watching it back, it was just a scrappy performance on my behalf. And second time round, like, genuinely, hand on heart, I think I will stop both of those guys. Yeah.
What about Sharia? Like, I felt like he improved, to be fair, from his fight with you. I thought he was much better against Hughes, but I also thought that Hughes beat him pretty hard. I thought, like, Hughes had a bit more in him as well, to be honest. In terms of that, Gaz has just asked in the YouTube chat, will we see Hughes and Vucenic again in Cage Warriors?
We just need to see what happens. I don't know anything that's booked or signed at the minute. I'm just waiting on hearing what is said from Cage Warriors, from the management, and whatever the management's happy with, that's what we'll go with. Whatever the coaches are happy with.
Because obviously they've got this Double Trouble show, haven't they, in December, I think it is. And I noticed that they got some of their bigger names on there, like Oban and a few others. Like, but I noticed your name wasn't on the poster, so I was like, "Oh, are they not going to use him?" and things like that. I was a bit surprised because I know you had said after the Sharia versus Hughes fight that you were ready to go. So I wondered if they were going to, they do that fight on that card. Because they seem to announce that card quickly.
That's sort of what we thought. That's what I thought the common consensus was, but it seems that that's not the case on one of the party sides. So whatever, we'll just see, whatever. But I just know that when the call comes, I'll be ready, whether if it was tomorrow or if it was in a year's time. I'll be training just as hard, so they ain't got to worry about me, just worry about their own selves.
Maybe we'll see it in the UFC, mate. You never know.
Maybe, for more money. For big bucks. Give me the money.
I think, in fairness, like, Danny made a point a couple of months back, I think it was, that, like, you see these fights on Cage Warriors and a lot of guys end up losing their undefeated streaks, which arguably aren't that important anyway. You know, they're more important to other people, some people than others. I think most fighters accept that they're going to lose at some point. But like, you do see, Dan, the top fighters like Jordan, Paul Hughes, Charrier, plenty of others, the likes of Ian Gary and people like that. I think Paddy did a relatively good job. I think probably because he was a bit kind of above maybe some of the others. That division wasn't quite as stacked at the top end as like the featherweight division is rammed, isn't it? So like, you don't want to see those fighters constantly going up against each other in Cage Warriors, do you? You'd rather them kind of hold it off a bit for the big stage.
Yeah, I don't see no point of keep rerunning the fights on the same show. I think at that time they were so closely, leveled, each of them. It was a case of on the day and the judges that were going to decide who was going to get the victory. But that said, I just want to clarify what Jordan said, and a lot of people think it's just fight talk and what have you. Jordan's done things in a very, very steady, progressive way. And some of these fights have been close, but they are classed as world-class fights at the end of the day that he's been having in Cage Warriors. But not only that, he's only been performing principally correct on his basic foundation. I've seen what Jordan can do with his knees. I can see what he can do with his elbows. I can see what he can do on the ground with his grappling. And people haven't even begun to see his wrestling capabilities yet because he's not had to go there. But we've just been piecing together this really extra strong skeleton before we put the muscles and skin on. And there's going to be some stoppages coming up ahead, no matter where it goes. It's not a case of him chasing any of these stoppages. He's just going to be very, very well educated in a way where wherever these weaknesses lie, he's going to find it and he's going to be, punching down the pipe at those weaknesses. He's done it absolutely right. I've already just briefly said that in UFC, I think we've seen some of the highest level MMA in modern times. I think Jordan's going to be the one that's going to be pushing new boundaries because that's what we do at our gym. We don't just do what's being done now. We're preparing to be doing what's going to come into fashion in the next 18 months, 2 years. I'm really excited to see how he performs with this new stuff that's going to be coming through. And he's going to be the one pushing the boundaries on a whole new level. It's honestly so exciting. You've seen about 40% of Jordan right now.
Yeah, that's good. I can't wait, mate. I've got to be honest. I really can't. One thing I do want to know very quickly, Dan, because I don't think I asked you. I want to ask you the same question that I just asked Jordan. Like, as Jordan's coach and a former featherweight champion of Cage Warriors, like, how did you feel about them doing the interim thing? Because I didn't feel like it was needed, because Jordan wasn't out for ages and ages. He was going to be back pretty quickly. They had, it's the trilogy shows, so they were already stacked with fights. Hughes versus Charrier is a big fight anyway. It could have been just the number one contender fight. Like, how did you feel about that? Like, did you feel it was needed, or lessens the title a bit?
No, at the end of the day, whoever holds that belt is never going to be satisfactory for him. It's always going to be seen as a secondary belt, a fake belt. It's obviously well earned. They're having tough fights to get that, but there should only ever be one belt at the end of the day. But it's being done because it's a business model at the end of the day. Cage Warriors, it drums up extra attention. You're fighting for something other than just the win. And so I get why they do it. But fighters behind the scenes, they don't care about what belt you got around your waist in terms of whether it's a white belt, blue belt, purple belt, black belt, etc., etc. They also don't really care what kind of interim belts around your waist. It's the main belt that matters, and that's the one Jordan's got. That's the one he's going to keep, and that's where it's going to stay.
Indeed, mate. So, Jordan, I know you haven't got much time, mate. So I'm going to do something which we call basically like the one-word game. I'm basically going to give you about 8 names, and you just got to tell me the first thing which comes to mind when you hear that name. But before we do that, questions in the chat. That's an interesting one then. What does Jordan think about Shanks versus Creasy? Tap or not a tap? Oh, you're muted, mate. Hang on.
I lost it.
Yeah, that was you muted me. It said you muted me.
Sorry, bro.
I haven't watched the fight, so I can't comment. I don't know.
Wow.
Look, on Luke Shanks' the way Luke Shanks posts it does look like a tap. But I had this in my pro debut. I made the guy tap. Do you remember that, Danny? I tapped him for guillotine, then he said he didn't tap, and the fight carried on, and then I tapped him.
Yeah.
Luckily, I tapped him twice rather than tap him and get tapped myself. So it's happened to me. So I'll say, yeah, he probably tapped, but we get to watch it run back, so it's a win-win for us.
Yeah, I hope they do that one on Double Trouble. But yeah, hopefully Sam's going to be on soon. We've had to keep moving him back week to week, but he is coming on soon. I know it's just he was due a few weeks back, and then we had to move him about a bit. Right, Jordan Vucenic, the one-word game. So just say the first thing which comes to mind when you hear these names.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor.
Weirdo.
That's a new one.
It's the new one.
Agreed.
Dana White.
Bald head.
Paddy the Bardy Pimblett.
Weird hair.
He's had it cut. Have you seen that?
Has he?
He's had his cut. His legendary hair. I'm gutted. Jake Paul.
Go.
Jack Shaw.
High level.
Canelo Alvarez.
The best.
Michael Bisping.
One eye.
And the final one. Let's move on. The final one is Paul Hughes.
Interim.
There we go, my friend. I like it.
Michael Bisping, one eye. That is what you think, isn't it? He pops his eye out.
Yeah, what
come to my mind? Oh, dear.
Could have said anything, can you? Could have said like British legend. Could have said.
Yeah, but I've got one and sitting in front of me, so I can't say that, can I?
That's it, mate. That's it. Donna Perry says, "Why do you think Conor McGregor's a weirdo? Please expand."
I just think some of the stuff he does is just weird. Like when he smokes, when he smokes joints and does house parties and punches old men and that. It's just weird. He's a bit power mad, isn't he, with all his money?
Yeah, it does seem like the money's kind of got to him a bit now, doesn't it? He's just on a whole nother level of just doing what he wants. But
to be fair, I got told a story about McGregor. I got told that he was a madman before he had all the money and the fame. Supposedly, he walked into like a hotel lobby years ago on an old Cage Warriors and said to loads of fighters, "What are you looking at?" as he walked past, after a fight. So he must have always just been a bit of a boy.
Yeah, and I think you add millions and millions and millions and millions to that. It's gonna have an effect.
Yeah, exactly that.
It's like
nice.
that guy.
Probably a sound guy if I met him, but I'd just say to him, "You're a bit of a weirdo, aren't you?" Does some mad stuff.
There we go. Yeah, it's a weird one, mate. Like, we remember that guy years ago who won the lottery. That then they used to call him like a chav and stuff in the papers, and he won like 10 million or something, and then just bought like a massive mansion and kind of just trashed it, bought a load of quad bikes and just ruined it, set it on fire and stuff, lost all his money and then went back to his old job. But it kind of reminds me of that. But they're like, even if you come into money, you're still the same. You're still gonna have the same personality traits. They might just get turned up a little bit. So if he was kind of game for it and quite mouthy anyway, he's gonna get more.
Yeah. Exactly that. Yeah.
I've never met him, so there we go. I will say there was another question. I can't find it. Well, I'll come back to it now. Right, Jordan, it's been a pleasure, mate, as always. And I appreciate you jumping on straight after you've been coaching. But, maybe next time we can get you for a bit longer and stuff like that, of course.
Yes.
But it's just been.
And was that your seminar? Was that what you was doing?
Nah. I teach twice a week as well, but I did that seminar on Friday, and they said that I was the best seminar they've ever had, and they've had Sam Creasy at that place doing the seminar, so I'm gonna make sure I bring that up to them when I see him.
There we go.
But they haven't had Danny Batten.
They said they didn't know who that was.
They're too young, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Danny was literally like pre-internet, really.
Yeah.
That's how old he is. Pre-internet.
Danny was fighting back when they used to wear one boxing glove in the UFC.
He used to have to fight like sumo wrestlers and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Brutal. No, mate, as always, as you know, pleasure. Come back anytime. When you got some fight news, mate, come back on and we'll have a chat. But you know, you take it easy, my friend. And we'll see you very soon.
All right, thank you for having me on, boys. I'll see you later. Have a good
night. I'll see you next week. I'll see you maybe tomorrow.
Well enjoyed.
Yes, see you tomorrow.
Ta-ra, buddy. Jordan Vucenic, the champ. Always a pleasure, my friends. I enjoy.
Legend in the making, that kid. I'm telling you, mate. Legend in the making.
It's he is very, very funny. But he's the real deal, as we've said before. He's going to be real good. But I think so Ben's going to join us about 9:00 to preview the boxing next week. So there was a question from Reese that I'm going to put to you now, and then we'll have a little chat about last night's UFC generally. Reese 37 says, is it rare for fighters to go undefeated in MMA then? There's been a few boxers who've done it. How rare is it in MMA? I mean, there's not many.
I definitely think
like Khabib obviously is the one which springs to mind straight away.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty rare. I just think in MMA there's more ways to lose. And because there's so many potential ways to lose. You know, you just get those days that when you screw up, you don't recover from it. You know, you can lose by submission, by getting knocked out, by getting slammed. You can get put into a TKO scenario on the ground where you can't no longer properly defend yourself if both arms are out the equation, such as crucifix style positions. You know, you can obviously get knocked out by your hands, elbows, knees, and that obviously presents cuts more so than in boxing. Just so many variants to lose. So for that fact, I think you know, that adds to it. And the other thing that we've constantly mentioned is that they will constantly fight each other, whoever's at the top. There's no hiding. No one wants to hide even. It seems their attitude is to put it on the line. I think they're true fighters in every sense of the word. They're not afraid to put it all on the line, so to speak.
Do you think as well, MMA's probably a slightly shorter career, I think, as well, to boxing? Like I think you seem to see more boxers go on to, you know, like 40s, late 40s, 50s.
Yeah,
than you do in MMA.
I think you're going to see. I think you're going to see more of that, just because again, it's kind of like
levels have improved what it is. Much, haven't they?
Yeah, it's not just that, but you know, the kind of athleticism and sharpness you need to compete in MMA on the true highest stage, which, you know, just to use UFC as an example, because that's obviously the most known example and the truest example of the highest level. I think they've got the best fighters in every weight category, all residing under one roof under this UFC. And you know, to cut it, that they're going to get younger and younger, particularly in the lighter weights. Yes, the heavier weights can go on. As we talk about UFC, you know, we've got a new UFC champion who's now in his 40s. You know, they are generally oddities, but if they're going to be seen, they're going to see it light heavyweight and heavyweight. So you can go on a little longer in the heavier brackets, but generally now it's becoming, you know, 32 and below. And I wouldn't be surprised that within the next decade that you might see people, you know, literally skimming their 30s and being past their prime regards being top tier MMA fighters.
There's more head trauma in the MMA as well, in terms of, because you can get kicked, punched, elbowed, like you said. And when you've got referees like that one on the prelims last night, mate, what chance of
I haven't seen the prelims.
Oh,
right, buddy. Yeah, I haven't seen the prelims. But you said about head trauma. I'm actually not. I haven't studied the science behind, or the kind of like the data.
Yeah.
On anyone that's got repercussions of brain issues, neurological issues after their fight career. I'd say you'd get a lot more boxers slurring with their speech generally than you do MMA fighters.
Yeah,
and I think for that fact that the distance in MMA is slightly longer, and obviously the gloves are less forgiving on the exterior of the face regards visual damage. And you are kicking the legs, punching the body, kicking the body, knee in the body. It isn't just all based around the head. Whereas boxing, although there's a lot of body work, predominantly you're throwing a lot more shots at the head than you do overall in an MMA match. I would suggest. I'd say the impact of blows in a boxing match are going to be much more than they are in an MMA match. But like I said, I'd have to really study the data. I'm only giving a guess sort of opinion on it. But it'd be an interesting statistic to look into. But I'm just going by on the fact that over the decades of watching boxing of any great interest from the 80s, a lot of those boxers from the 80s and 90s, they do, a lot of them have a slurred speech. That they've got lifelong changes to the way they sound.
Absolutely.
And so, and as you don't appear to get that in MMA, I can't think of one off the top of my head that's particularly slurry after an MMA career, to be honest with you. So be interested one if anyone's got data on it.
So the fight I was referring to was on the prelims of UFC 267 last night. It was between Alessio Zaleski versus Benoit Saint Denis on the prelims, and basically referee, I'm going to butcher his name now, but his name was Vyacheslav Kislev was the referee. He was supposed to be refereeing on the main card. He was banned from refereeing on the main card. Zaleski landed numerous unanswered shots in the second round, and I'm talking brutal shots. And there was a point where Saint Denis literally backed up against the cage, covered up, and into almost like a ball against the cage. And everyone, the crowd, the referee, the commentators, were all sort of shouting, stop the fight, stop the fight. He didn't stop the fight. It was remarkable. I've never seen anything like it. It didn't stop the fight. And then the round finished. And to be fair to Saint Denis, he got through the third round. It went to a decision. I think it was 30-26, which kind of tells you the story of the fight. But it was one of the most, honestly, it was disgusting. And John McCarthy said that it was the worst job of officiating a UFC event he's ever seen. And when you think back to those early days, that's saying something. Daniel Cormier said the same. Kenny Florian, all the names, different fighters.
Sure,
everyone was quite shocked by it. I haven't heard what Dana White said yet, but I'm sure that he would have been fuming. Because it was Saint Denis' first fight at the UFC. He looked way out of his depth, mate, I gotta say. And I don't like to say that about any fighter, but he did look out of his depth. It could have been the occasion just got to him, maybe. I don't know. But the referee is in there. Their job, first and foremost, is to protect fighters when they won't protect themselves. I'll tell you who made quite an interesting point, which I'd like to get your take on as well, because I know you haven't seen the fight. I think it was Randy Brown said, why is it that in mixed martial arts it's frowned upon for the corner to throw in the towel? Like you've seen it in boxing in recent years. People have done it. I think it was Deontay Wilder's corner did it in the fight against Fury. Was it the second fight? Not sure. But it does happen in boxing. Like the corners will take it out of the boxer's hand. Like Randy Brown thinks that it should be encouraged almost that the corners should rescue.
I disagree. No, I disagree, because MMA is a different sport. So let's have a look at what happens in boxing. In boxing, you're getting hit with a larger glove, a much more padded glove. So although you can get these one punch knockouts, don't get me wrong, but some of them are a knock-on effect, and the ropes, they can keep you up, and the ropes give way a little bit, and so you can bounce and move, and it might look like the boxer's more intelligently functional than they really are. But in MMA, when you get knocked off balance or knocked down, you normally it goes to the ground, and you get the threat of or the continuation of strikes for the ref to step in. There's no real time to throw in a towel. And to be honest, because of the grappling elements and the ref looking to maybe jump in, there's no way that, so if they throw the towel, there's no guarantee that the ref's going to see it. I mean, throwing a towel is not exactly the most accurate thing in the world.
I think he means
particularly
that basically, like, coaches should save a fighter from himself, perhaps more. What he shouldn't be frowned upon was what you were saying. But I get
what you're saying, but I just don't think it's feasible to do for those reasons. Yeah, if a corner throws in the towel, what if the ref ain't seeing it in the heat of the moment, and they're scrambling going, I don't know. I just think it's going to complicate the referee's job's difficult and on the spot.
What about in between rounds?
Anyway,
like so in that
absolutely
case,
then
after that barrage and the ref didn't stop it, like, could his corner have then said, right, come on, well, let's live to fight another day, sort of thing? I'd agree with that much more. But I just think in the heat of my, I just think when you're really compromised in MMA, you're normally put away. It's much more well established. You're done for, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So to put into context how bad it was, C.R. Badahozda, I apologize if I pronounced that name wrong. He's the head coach at Evolve Fighting Team. He said, "I'm so glad that Sandanis didn't die in this fight. The referee needs to be banned from any octagon, ring, or mat. He's a danger to athletes, a serious danger." Now, to me,
I'm going to have to watch this,
because that's coming from someone like yourself, or like Uriah Faber, or people who have been through it, fought themselves, have coached in all aspects of martial arts and MMA. So for him to say so strongly about that, I think tells you a story of how dangerous it was. I'm just going to find another comment. Obviously Randy Brown is a current fighter. Like, he's not. So I find it quite interesting that. So what he said, I'll quote exactly what Randy Brown said. He said, "Besides this ref being trash as hell, when are we going to have a conversation about the negative stigma MMA has about throwing in the towel? I say, live to fight another day. This man's coaches do not care for his life."
Right, yeah. It's just difficult. I mean, look, this is for, UFC to, have a big background check on who comes in to doing the referee. I don't know. It's just, for me, it should be down to that. Of course, the coaches have got some kind of element. I'm sure if it's really that bad and I was in the corner, I'd be like, "Ref, he's had enough. He's had enough." I'll be trying to shout out. But I just think trying to throw in the towel, there's another reason why throwing in the towel might not work. You're not allowed to stand up on the cage side. There's a lot of rules that people don't know about. You have to sit down. You're not allowed to bang on the cage. You're not allowed to have your hands on the cage side. There's a lot of really strict stipulated rules. And trying to lob a towel, not only over the cage to get it in the cage in the first place, but in a way where you can get the ref's attention. What if they're over the opposite side of the cage? You ain't getting no towel over there. Yeah, so in that sense, it's just not going to happen. You're kind of a little bit slaves to the refereeing. But I believe, from my understanding and from what I remember witnessing, there is a head ref there, and I think if it's getting pushed on too far, I'd imagine from the cage side they'll be trying to get the ref's attention in some way to maybe call it a day. I don't know, but yeah, it is a shame when that happens, and if that kind of thing is a regularity, someone's going to get seriously hurt. And thank goodness it seems I've not heard anything that has been. But I mean, I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on a personal level with it. But it sounds pretty bad. And
there was at least three times that they could have stopped that fight.
I think he's fairly newish to UFC, isn't he, that fighter? We watched him not long back and was quite impressed with him. But look, it doesn't take much of an educated fighter at any level in MMA to witness bad refereeing when it's happened. It's just a shame when it does. And I think it's a rarity overall. I mean, this is another thing to the other issues we spoke about refereeing, where, you know, we've looked at a referee, you know, say, you know, miss a cage grab, and, you know, there's so many things that can happen in MMA where a referee could be critiqued over, and so on and so forth.
They seem so inconsequential compared to
jumping in early and stuff like that. I mean, but I think it's another thing when you're letting a fight go on way too long, and clearly,
100%.
you know, one fighter's receiving way too much than he should. Yeah, it's a hard one to call, really. But that's a few things, though, for listeners to think about, though, is the positioning of the coaches. We're really not in a position to intervene in any fast, interactive way with the referee without breaking the strict UFC rules. Now, trust me, if you've got rules not to stand, not to bang, not to grab at the cage or anything, you don't want to be doing it, because your fighter is the one that's going to get penalised, and you could get banned from the UFC event. And, you know, no one wants that. So we're there to put our bums on the seat, and we're there to give coaching advice to the fighter. And that's pretty much all our position is. Regards stopping the fight is all down to the commission and the referees.
Good shout. So Rob Boyle asked a question, which was, he said, what do we think about the intergender fight that happened on Saturday? I didn't know what it was about, so I had a quick look. So in Poland last night, they had a card, an MMA card, which featured 2 intergender matches. Now, I haven't seen them. I probably won't watch them because I've got no interest in it, because I think it's ludicrous. But the general reaction from the MMA fans who did come across it last night on social media was that of disgust by the sound of it. A couple of people described it as like just horrific. The referee had to stop. It was basically, but I don't know if it was a professional event, because it says the female athlete was Ula Sisek. She was an arm wrestler and a fitness instructor who regularly shows off her sort of body and biceps and things like online. But the person she fought against, I don't know if he's a fighter, but the little bit I just clip, or the photographs, should I say, of what I see, it looks horrific. He seems to get her in like a mounted position, almost with his knees on her shoulders and just pummeling her. Not something I want to see. We've talked about it with the transgender fighters recently on shows, that we didn't want to see that, and I want to see this even less. I don't know if you've got anything to add on that, mate.
Yeah, I actually said someone messaged me about it. I was unaware of it until I got this message. And so I quickly looked into what he had sent me, and then replied and got into a little bit of a dialogue with him. Yeah, there's absolutely no place for real world competitive MMA between males and females. You know, you could get the lightest division top ranked male and put it against the heaviest division top ranked female, and the female's not going to get nowhere near the guy on a world stage. You know, that said, I'm not adverse to Rob. You're right, Rob. I'm not adverse to having, say, a display bout, you know, where it's very much controlled. Obviously, where no one's really being competitive to win, but to demonstrate MMA, absolutely no problem with that. Where they are going to be doing some form of impact, but as soon as it's competitive, yeah, look, you know, a woman's never going to stand a chance against a guy, and it's partly why I have my opinion of transgenders not being able to compete, because I do feel that there's some kind of advantage, particularly if those males that trans over to becoming so-called female, you know, once they reach puberty, their skeleton, their lungs and their blood flow are all increased over the woman, no matter what you do to their testosterone levels. So that's why I sit very strongly with that view. I'm not against seeing them fight, but just fight against one another is all I say.
Danny, have you ever seen anyone get seriously hurt in your whole fighting career during in a fight, like a MMA fight, like proper, like a sanctioned
really
professional
just
fight, but just someone gets seriously hurt?
Only seriously hurt in that they've, you know, maybe had a knee pop with a knee bar, a leg break. One of those originally happened. First one I ever witnessed was on Cage Rage, you know, back in London. Was it Ross Pretifer? I think his name was. It's not the name of the guy. He's the one that shin blocked this guy and he broke his leg. Like we saw what happened, very, very similar to Weidman and Anderson Silva. You they're kind of quite serious injuries, but not serious injuries in terms of head trauma. Although that being said, there is MVP against the Brazilian dude. What's his name? The name's just jumped out of my head. He had his frontal lobe caved in.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was all.
Didn't he? Was it a knee? Was it a knee? Yeah, that's pretty horrifying. But I wasn't there to. Well, so I wasn't there. Or was I there? No, I wasn't. I have been there when he's fought though. Yeah, I mean that was pretty horrific. But I would say, really, in terms of anything like life-threatening, I can't say that's really happened in MMA. MMA is largely a pretty safe combat sport, to be honest. When you've got two very healthy athletes.
It's sanctioned so much by the various bodies and referees. The refereeing standard in my opinion, in MMA is generally very high. You do get these kind of anomalies every now and again. I'm that referee from last night, going back to that, I don't remember seeing that name over the last 98 shows that we've done.
Yeah.
So he could have been brought in on a trial or for Fight Island.
Yeah.
Could be a local referee. I don't know. But
sure.
Obviously, I would be very surprised if he's ever back in the UFC, or certainly not for a good few years when he's gone to really hone his craft as a referee. But yeah, that's Donna said, has there been any female athletes who've transitioned to male and gone on to fight? Not that I could think of, and there wouldn't be, in my opinion.
Not what I've heard.
This is the way I kind of try to explain it to people when they ask me about it. Amanda Nunes is the greatest female fighter that there has ever been. She has literally beaten everyone over, I think, 3 weight classes in her career. Nobody can beat her. Even Valentina Shevchenko, who is also one of the greatest fighters of all time, who has destroyed everyone at her own weight class. She lost to Amanda Nunes, and relatively convincingly, if I remember correctly. I can't remember 100%. I don't know if it was. I think it was quite close. I can't remember. But my point being, Amanda Nunes, yes, there might be the odd male fighter who she could knock out or crack, but on the whole, she would lose to the majority of male fighters, particularly around the same weight and above. And I think that tells you everything.
She wouldn't even get ranked to get onto a world-class promotion at a weight against males. That's the truth of the matter. What is the percentage statistics? I think that's something like on average 70% weaker than males up top. I mean that's not a little bit. That's huge.
Yeah, that's a massive strength, and that's a problem. Like anyone getting an advantage. I slaughtered Costa last week because he was 20 pound overweight, because I felt he was 2 divisions higher that Vittori had to go to fight him to keep the fight on, and I thought it was disgusting. I thought, that's cheating.
Yeah,
it's an advantage, and just as I don't want to see that, I don't want to see people taking steroids when other fighters are not, and because it's an advantage, and when you've got a big advantage in fighting, someone will get hurt.
Yeah, look at Adesanya, how dominant he's been at middleweight. Arguably one of the most dominant people in a prospective weight division to date.
Well, there's a reason why people compare him to John Jones, isn't there? Because he's been that dominant.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, he went up to light heavyweight, fought Blachowicz. I mean, Blachowicz top tier, we know that. But really, didn't. Yeah, he kind of got. No, I wouldn't say manhandle or anything, but the size really become apparent. For the first time, he was taken down and kept on his back, which no one's able to do in his more expected weight division. Maybe as he fills out and becomes a naturally bigger guy, he could start competing. But size does matter, and when you add into the fact that you're going to have a massive strength advantage between 2 different sexes, it's a no-brainer on what's going to happen. And it has no place in MMA and a competitive means. And it's going to do the sport nothing but potential harm.
Yes.
We've had all our freak show fights when no one really knew how MMA was going to materialize back in the 1990s when it was open weight. If you did that kind of thing now, that would be fround at. But it's an accepted part.
Days.
Yeah, it's an accepted part of the evolution of the sport.
To be fair, I think
absolutely.
There's a reason why the sport moved on from that sort of stuff. because there's no place for it, like you say. And I don't want to kind of go over the same subject that we've talked about before with the transgender fighters and stuff. Like, we've kind of talked that to death. We've said what we think, and I don't want to repeat ourselves.
You know what would I get what you're saying, but you know what would be really interesting is to someone that perhaps with some more factual science backed up opinions of it, maybe on the other side of it. I mean, I've done a little bits of research on it, and I've got my opinions forged on what I think I understand of the facts that I've read. But it would be interesting in someone else who perhaps has a different view, more of a woke view, if I'm allowed to label them as such. But it would be interesting, and I'm not open to having my mind changed, or maybe not fully, but maybe put things in my mind that I can add up to the mix. Yeah, absolutely. But it is strange. I think you said it was Donna that mentioned that. Have we ever seen a woman, cross over to becoming a male and competing? I don't think you will see a woman successfully compete, because again, once you've reached your puberty age, your bone skeleton has been sort of fixated. Your muscularity is going to be limited no matter what testosterone you put into your body, and the capacity of your blood flow is never going to be as much, and your lung capacity is never going to be as much as a male. So I don't think you're going to see any breakthroughs regards the other way around. And I think generally, I mean, I don't know what the statistics is on people transitioning from one sex to another, regards male to female, female to male. But it seems that all we seem to get in the press and in news is males crossing over to females. And I think for good reason, that probably is because they're the ones that when they do cross over to any particular sport, they're suddenly becoming hugely successful in those sports. And for the reasons that I've stated, that's what I feel it is. But yeah, I digress and say again that it would be interesting to get someone of an opposite view, and it'll freshen up the whole debate and conversation, because largely everyone that we mentioned it to, including yourself, has agreed along the lines with what I've been putting forward.
Yeah, I'm always open to like hearing different points of view and having like a debate and stuff with with regards to that sort of thing. But I don't want to talk I don't want to go around in circles and kind of talk about it every single week. But if there's if it does come up, we're not going to avoid it by any means. But I just don't want. I'm wary of repeating ourselves, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, of course.
So Ben's going to be with us in just a few minutes. But talk to me a bit about your thoughts from the last night's UFC, mate. Just generally, some of the stuff that stood out for you.
Yeah. I've already said. Are we going to actually talk about the individual fights at all? Or?
I think we'll see. We probably will. We'll have about 15 minutes towards the end. Just
the Sandhagen Petr fight to me was one of the most high level modern day MMA fights. That displayed a new style, a recent style of MMA striking, which I've been banging on about regards switching stance all the time. Not only switching stance as a start point for your given combinations, but also your stance changing, moving forward with your combinations to cover up bigger ground, because the striking formats of MMA is that the distance between the fighters is bigger, along with the circulated cage. There's more footwork opportunity to disengage, and so your combinations have to be elongated, particularly demonstrated from Petr Yan over Sandhagen. Sandhagen was really long, tall, has his arms down by his holsters, firing off shots from his hips to be really fast and long and rangy. And then you've got Petr Yan, who has to cover in that extra range, and he demonstrated it great with spinning back fists, punches and kicks with this stepping forward to cover ground. And largely, you've got to do protective footwork for that. When you're throwing out a combination, stepping and going in with the kicks to land to the head or the body, when someone's in retraction, cutting angles on the retraction of Sandhagen that's a difficult object to hit. And like I say, you have to kind of do a little bit of predictive footwork or really study your opponent to know which way he likes to turn out of trouble. And I feel like he just done a lot of study on Sandhagen. He had a lot of preconceived and pre-prepped combinations, which is the reason why you saw it landing time and time again. And people may not have noticed, but Sandhagen's right-hand side of his face was the side that he kept getting clobbered on. And I think it was largely due to the fact that he does have his hands down by his waist, and he has got away with it up to the level of people that he's been competing against. But Petr Yan and his fight team have clearly spotted a weakness in that form of striking, and Petr Yan really exploited it. But that said, Sandhagen, wow, what a fighter as well. I mean, he was incredible too.
Yeah, it was quite an just incredible display of fighting skills, to say the least.
Yeah,
but we are joined by boxing media pundit and author, Mr. Ben Doughty. How are you, my friend? Welcome back.
I'm good, guys. How's it going?
All good.
Yeah, you're right, Ben.
All good. Thank you for joining us, mate. Thank you for finding the time. We appreciate it as always. Got a big boxing fight next week with Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant. Is this only going one way?
I'd be surprised if Plant pulled off the upset, Simon, but I don't think he's going to get annihilated like some people are predicting. You know, you see a lot of... I think sometimes a fighter assumes this reputation as a destroyer, perhaps a bit disingenuously, you know, when people don't really think it through. And I think Canelo, you know, I mean, he wasn't extended by Paul Smith, but he had to work, you know, another tall fighter who knew his way around the ring. He had to go to 12 rounds at least. It was a bit of a steady, kind of one-sided beating. And, you know, and I think Canelo doesn't tend to destroy decent world-class opposition, you know, early doors. So Plant, do you know what? Plant looks like he studies Floyd Mayweather, and I'm pretty sure he'll be watching a lot of the Mayweather-Canelo fight, however much dwindling relevance it might have, being as it happened, you know, like 8 years ago. But I see certain Mayweatherisms and tributes to Mayweather in Plant's style, with the kind of with the chin tucked into the shoulder, with the low left hand, the kind of that so-called check hook, the counter left hook, and the pivot, and all the rest of it. The way he kind of waves the left hand upstairs and then throws that quick stab jab to the body. I think he pretty likes Floyd, you know, and I think he's probably studied him a lot. And he probably will be, as long ago as it was, might be basing his kind of game plan on that kind of approach. You know, the only guy to beat Canelo officially. So, but you know what? No, I'm not predicting the upset. I think Canelo is too formidable, too good. He seems to be in the prime of his life. I just don't think that Plant is going to get completely steamrolled. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I wouldn't say I was 100% sort of up with Caleb Plant as a fighter. I'm kind of looking to you, I suppose, as our resident boxing expert, just sort of tell us a bit more about Caleb Plant. Like, he's an undefeated fighter for a reason. Like, he's not a bum, which I saw someone describe him as yesterday on Twitter, which is obviously not the best gauge for you know, fighters. But like you've just said there, he's not. You don't think he's going to get steamrolled, but no one seems to be giving him much of a chance. Reese just said in the chat, he said, I'm really looking forward to Canelo and Plant. I think Canelo will win, but I don't write off Caleb Plant.
Me neither. You know, I mean, Caleb Plant, the thing that's interesting to me is he's a white American fighter. I mean, he looks a bit, I mean, I mentioned this the other day on Facebook. I said, if he does pull off the, you know, what some people regard as the unthinkable, sure, it'll be the greatest achievement by a white American boxer this century. With the only thing I could think of that might rival that was Jermaine Taylor, you know, being beaten twice by Kelly Pavlik. Okay, but the reason why that interests me is simply because I've always found it a little bit mystifying. Whatever happened to the white American boxer? It's not something. I mean, some people get a bit uneasy when you start talking about race, you know, or anything to do with ethnicity in this day and age. But honestly, when you look at the old era, you know, when you had guys like Harry Greb, Benny Leonard, Mickey Walker, and then latterly you had like Rocky Marciano's and Jake LaMotta's, and a whole host of other great, you know, and Jack Dempsey and et cetera, for some reason, the whole gentrification of the white American male seems to be so all-consuming and total that they literally haven't produced anything but for decades. If I asked you, could you name an all-time great white American? I know they come from various heritages like Italian backgrounds and Jewish and all the rest of it, but regardless, we're talking about Caucasians, right? Could you name me a great white American fighter since Jake LaMotta, who was a little bit after Rocky Marciano in terms of his activity, with Marciano retiring in 1956, you know? And before you rack your brains, the answer is you can't, yeah. And And I just think it's interesting because in the UK we produce talent pretty much down the middle. I would say, we have we have black fighters, we have white fighters. Obviously, they're from the more kind of working class backgrounds. That's just the way it is. Boxers do not come from the gated communities of Chelsea, at high level, and I'm guessing they never will. But we seem to produce talent across the ethnic demographics, and we have Asian lads that do well as well. We have the travelling community that have done very well in recent years. Whereas in America, the white American male has just completely dropped off. So it interests me that Plant is there at all, in a sense, because it's certainly not. It's not cultural, and it doesn't seem to be sociological for that to happen. So I think he's had a hard upbringing. A lot of people have spoken about his story of tragedy and loss. He lost his mother died tragically. His daughter died, which obviously is always a tragedy. No parent should see their children buried. And it has been mentioned, that what a rocky story it would be if he can beat Canelo, because a lot of people have taken to him because of the adversity and tragedies he's suffered. Yeah. And you know what I mean? The man can fight. You probably saw the handbag situation when he took a swipe at Canelo, and Canelo got the best of it because he lay back and then went 1-2, and then he drew blood or whatever. You know what? Some people are even basing his writing Plant off based on that, which I think is ludicrous. They're saying, you could just see. I mean, I realise not everybody has to be Einstein, and some people are saying you could just see Canelo's reflexes. He's much better and quicker and more powerful. But one thing I would say is let's put that to one side. That is not relevant at all, But Plant he hasn't fought anything. He's only had 21 fights. He hasn't fought anything like the level of competition that Canelo has. He quite impressively beat the guy Caleb Truex, who got an upset win over James DeGale in 2017, and then was defeated in the rematch by Chunky. But I just think he's got self-belief. I think the important thing, at least, is he thinks he can beat Canelo, which I think will help to make him competitive for a little while. I mean, but ultimately, I just think, you can say what you like about Canelo, but at the end of the day, he's a damn good fighter, isn't he? I don't believe he's only lost once. I think he's lost at least once, one other time when the other guy didn't get his hand raised. But Canelo right now, he just seems to be that consummate fighter. When you slow his fights down and you watch his technique, he's just really damn good at the minute. And the other thing about him is he just seems to be so focused. You never hear of Canelo getting into trouble or, kind of extracurricular activities. And I just don't think there's anybody in that division who can beat him right now. And I don't make Plant the exception to that.
Yeah, I think it's certainly interesting in terms of, if not Plant, who, almost the question becomes, because like you say, there's no one who really stands out that you think, that person could beat Canelo. And what I think in Canelo's, certainly in recent years, he just looks like he gets better. And he's just at a different level. And I think sometimes in certain divisions in MMA and in boxing, you do get these kind of fighters who are just stand out. They stand out above everyone else in the division. However, I was just having a look at Caleb Plant's to see if he had fought anyone, of real sort of to really test it and top level. There's no one that sticks out. In terms of your question about American white fighters, Reese David Evans says, "What about Mickey Ward?"
Well, quite. Yeah. What about Mickey Ward? Well, yeah, he was kind of a glorified club fighter made good. Don't get me wrong, I love Mickey Ward, and his trilogy with Arturo Gatti is part of the annals of the sport, And I was actually at one of those fights, the second one. Lucky enough to be there live, and I think Mickey Ward, every time I heard him speak about boxing, he's a great guy, but he's nowhere near an all-time great fighter. And anybody who thinks he is, that'd just be a most ridiculous perception to have. Mickey Ward had 13 losses. All right, by simply saying that doesn't tell the story, because I could name you a whole bunch of all-time great fighters who lost more. But Mickey Ward had 13 losses at a certain level, 13 or 14, I believe. And what Mickey Ward was a fringe world-class guy, you would call him. He was a great pressure fighter, a very tough guy, very honourable guy, and he was a wicked body puncher. But he wasn't quite as good as Arturo Gatti, who was a world-class fighter and a multi-weight world champion. But he had a very good chemistry in the ring with Arturo Gatti, But no, Mickey Ward is not at all. I don't think you can name an all-time great American fighter of the last 60 years. I defy anybody to do it. There just hasn't been one. The Mickey Ward certainly wouldn't be the answer. Kelly Pavlik, who looked like he was going to be that kind of one of the big figures in boxing for a while, but things seemed to go wrong. I heard he had a backstory of alcoholism and such, and then he kind of dropped off. Obviously, his thing was getting ruined by Bernard Hopkins, who Jermaine Taylor had beaten twice. It kind of goes around, it comes around. But the only other thing people might say, just to get this, some people, I believe technically Mexicans and such are actually Caucasian, but in boxing terms, they talk about black fighters, white fighters, and Latino fighters in the American gyms, certainly in New York. And obviously, when you talk about guys like Canelo, I know Canelo looks kind of white and Irish and all the rest of it. In boxing terms, I think of them as Latins. I'm not. Maybe I was a professor of what is the science of the different kind of races and ethnicities, eugenics or something, or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that's
I'd probably be on shaky ground in that academic format. But in boxing, they say there was a guy called Tyrone Crawley once in the 80s who was waiting for a tune-up on a TV. I think it was ESPN, and he said he was black himself, but he said he wouldn't fight a black fighter because he didn't think there was this prejudice amongst black fighters that they're the best, and he said he wouldn't fight a black fighter for this particular date for a tune-up. He said, but he'd fight a Latin or maybe a white, was what he said to the TV company. So the only reason I mention that, other than it being amusing, is that if anybody gets on the stream now and says, what about Oscar De La Hoya? I would say, no, the thing is, Oscar De La Hoya is a Latin. I'm talking about people who are kind of, pale like myself and
yes. Well,
plenty of sun and all the rest of it.
I just Googled it to see if I could find someone.
Yeah.
I didn't.
And I'm saying, Simon and Danny, isn't it weird? Because we've got Joe Calzaghe, we've had Carl Froch, we've got Ricky Hatton, and we've got Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn and Prince Nassim Hamed. And, Frank Bruno wasn't an all-time great, but, I think we've got a nice, even...
Khan you could have thrown in there, up until probably...
Do you know what I mean? When you look at the legendary British fighters, of Lennox Lewis even, I know some people argue he wasn't British, and that's where it all gets interesting. This is not about race, in any kind of heavy way, and it's not about nationality. It's just fun. People's different perceptions of things. But I think in the UK, we've got a pretty nice melting pot of different kinds of people. In America, I'm just saying, it's like literally every white American male has moved into marketing or computers or finance or something, and they don't produce those kind of broken-nosed warriors, like Harry Greb anymore. They're
all doing MMA, I guess.
Yeah. No, I think you make a really interesting point, though, Ben. I don't think there's anything shameful to talk about ethnicity in terms of potential advantages, and because genetically they are very, very slightly different in that a lot of the black community, we're predominantly talking about males here, they have a slimmer bone structure, a slimmer muscularity to the lower half of their body, so they can hold a lot more proportionate of their weight on the upper portion of their body, so more muscled, and they can be predominantly more fast muscle twitch. And look, you're never going to see, or you will probably never see an Olympian black swimmer succeed. There ain't any. Their ethnicity just doesn't function well in cold climates of the water. So I don't think it's shameful to discuss it.
It's just shaky ground, isn't it? When you get to a certain point,
it can be if you're going to get offended by it. But look, there are advantages. Look, the Ethiopians and long distance runners like that. You're getting Kenyans, and they're running incredibly fast. Almost
long distance,
unbelievable times. Long distance running. The world records dropping that. They're nearly down to 2 hour, 26-mile runs. I mean, you'll be lucky to be able to run 200 meters at the pace they're running 26 miles. And, it's because they've got a larger lung capacity. They're less muscled on the lower portion of their body. And whereas Caucasian people, we're much more heavily muscled, shorter legged from the waist down. You're just genetically, mildly different, and at the extreme sports that gets exposed. And maybe as well, Ben, particularly with America, there's a lot of obviously poverty in the black community. I think, what is it? Is a 6% of the population of America is American black male. And so they come up from these ghettos and these slums, so they've kind of brought up rough and ready. Maybe it's the positioning of the boxing places. It could be that.
That was always the case in the 1970s and 80s and earlier even, and you saw, so many great black American fighters in those decades. They're still strong in the sport these days, but the black American community, or their kind of demographic in boxing, has dropped off a little bit because their community has become more gentrified, and there's been a kind of degree of social economic uplift, where there are more options than simply fighting your way out of the slums, as you put it. And we've seen the rise of the Eastern Europeans, because white Eastern Europeans we've seen, which wasn't a factor back in the 80s. See, I think I mentioned this to you guys before, that Bob Arum gave an interview in the 80s, late 80s, to KO magazine, and he said, "You keep saying white American." He said, "You keep saying white guys can't fight." He said, "White American guys can't fight." He said, "White Russians can, trust me." And he said, "And they're going to be a major force in the next 20 years when certain things change in the communist countries." So it is odd, like I say. I believe that people say that the reason why America wasn't producing quite so many black great American fighters anymore was because of things like basketball, other sports which are more lucrative, and also because of gentrification and more kind of academic-based careers as well. So, but either way, perhaps we shouldn't get too far off the track of whether Caleb Plant is capable of beating Canelo Alvarez, regardless of what colour he is. I don't see it, but I just think it's interesting. I mean, he's a skilled guy, and he's a young guy who's got belief in himself. And I'm quite, I don't know about you, but I'm quite up for it. I'm looking forward to this next week. When Canelo fought that guy Yildirim, the Turkish guy, I had no interest in it whatsoever. This, I am interested in it. I want to see how it looks up and shakes up when they get in the ring. And I think Caleb Plant, he's got an interesting backstory. He's got an interesting style. And I think he's got enough skills and self-belief to have a go at least.
So,
he's got interesting physical advantages as well, isn't he? He's like 6'1". He's got like a 4-inch reach advantage. I think if he can make his physicality, the differences to Canelo, if he can make that apparent in the ring, he could make an interesting battle of it. I just think it's a case of, fighting smart with who and what you are. And, has got some advantages there. He just needs to perhaps just put it into play well on the night, so to speak.
The only thing
I think that'll be interesting.
When you talk about physical advantages and height and reach, Danny, immediately I think of Callum Smith. I think I said Paul Smith earlier. I meant Callum Smith. I think of Callum Smith and the physical advantages he had, and now he's since moved up to light heavyweight, and it didn't seem to do him any good at all, did it? I think Canelo doesn't mind at all. A guy, it's he is beyond the pest master at getting past the jab and slipping punches and working the body. So I'm not sure if they will prove to be a massive Italian physical advantage on the night. I think Plant's skills and his IQ is his best bet, regardless of him being long and tall, really.
So Ben, just to very quickly finish us off, there's a really interesting question from Reese, which I want to put to you in a minute. But first of all, as someone who likes to have the odd bet on an outsider, some of the betting for next week's boxing is that you could have Saul Alvarez in the first 3 rounds, 8-1, or you can have Caleb Plant in the first 3 rounds, 50-1, and then obviously it's like 50 for Plant. It's basically 50-1, and you can have rounds 1-3, 4-6, 7-9. Like if Caleb Plant was to win, how do you see him winning? If he was able to pull it off the middle, as it were.
It would have to be on points, and I would be inclined to if people wanted to make it this specific, to bet on a split decision or a majority decision. The difference being that a majority decision is when one card is given as a draw, whereas a split decision when you've got the 2-1 breakdown of the winner. But I don't see Canelo getting stopped. I really don't. I mean, I know anybody can get cut with a punch, which is, but with in a way that is adjudged to come from a punch, a legitimate punch, which means they declared the loser, if it happens in that kind of time frame. I think Canelo seems to have an iron jaw as well, and I don't think, you've seldom seen him troubled in the ring, really. I mean, he fought Golovkin twice and went toe-to-toe with him the second time. Never looked like he was out of sorts for a moment. Can't see Plant stopping him. So I think it would have to be points. And here's the other thing. People talk about, the big kind of sacred cow that Canelo is, and it's very hard to get a decision against him. Quite honestly, I really thought Miguel Cotto beat him. I know it's not my most popular opinion, but I do believe that. I thought that Golovkin definitely beat him the first time. I thought Erislandy Lara many years ago, and it is a long time ago now, I admit, like middleweight, I thought he beat him. Austin Trout was close, but I don't mind Canelo winning that. Second Golovkin fight, I thought Canelo, it really could have gone either way, but I didn't think it was an outrageous robbery. I thought Canelo did well in that fight, and I don't have a huge problem with him getting the decision, to be honest with you. But I think he lost. The thing is, when he lost to Floyd Mayweather, one of the judges' cards was drawn, as you may know. So that was a majority decision, which is that's just off the scale. I mean, it has to be corruption, because I don't think anybody you could think of the most clueless combat sports person of your acquaintanceship, of your casual acquaintance. I think they could have figured out that Mayweather won that fight, So, but so you know what? It has to be on points, but that it's very hard to get a decision against Saul Canelo Alvarez, isn't it? Because he's a big commercial animal.
Yes. I think it needs to be almost like a very clear victory to get that decision, because they don't want him to lose. They want him to keep winning and keep going on, of course. So, just to finish us off then, Reese said, I wanted to ask Ben, does he have any stories about Shannon Briggs? He was an absolute character outside the ring, and I wanted to see if Ben had any stories about him.
Do you know what? I've not really crossed paths with Shannon Briggs. I remember because to be honest, it really turned me off, all that "Let's Go Champ" thing and the reinvention. To me, that was a total social media phenomenon where he kind of, got this kind of dumb slogan that people started chanting in their thousands at one point. He'd come to Britain for whatever reason, and he was following the Klitschko's around, wasn't he, and stalking them. That was something he was doing. It was that long ago. Then he'd come to Britain, and there'd be people mobbing him in Liverpool, saying "Let's go, champ." And the whole thing really got on my nerves a little bit. I thought his relevance was restricted to the 90s, really. But I know it's an interesting. If Reece fancies watching something, there's an interesting documentary. It's called Welcome to the Sewer, and it's about boxing. I believe that's the one. And it focuses partly on Shannon Briggs and his relationship with his manager, Michael Marley, and it's in the early days. And it also deals with the Larry Holmes versus Evander Holyfield fight and such. But Briggs is featured in it quite a lot. But I remember Briggs' first loss, he lost to a fellow called Darryl Wilson, and he blamed it on an asthma attack. I do remember that. I remember he said that there was no way he could have run out of gas, but what it was, he'd been running in a warm place like California where he'd been training. And when he got to a cold place where the fight was, I believe, in Atlantic City, the culture shock for his lungs or, allergies or whatever played up. And he said he was stricken with an asthma attack mid-fight, and that's the only reason he incurred his first loss. But I mean, but you know what? That we haven't had any particular face-to-face dealings. I can't say.
Cool. I've actually just dropped the YouTube link to Welcome to the Sewer in the Facebook chat if people would like to check that out afterwards. Ben, I know you're short for time, mate. I really appreciate you giving us some time, and I'm sure we'll get you back on soon to talk about it. Maybe if you're free next week, maybe we can have a chat about the fight. That'd be great.
Next Sunday I will be chilling at my girlfriend's, and let's see how the fight goes, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Cheers, Ben.
Cheers,
appreciate
guys.
Thank you, Ben.
Cheers.
Love it, mate. Love it. Absolute legend of a guy, and he's just, the knowledge is incredible, as we say. Like it's just fascinating, but knows his stuff, mate, and that's why I love
absolutely does
boxing, because people have got an interest in the boxing side of things, and I think like for me personally, I know more about the Jake Paul and that sort of stuff that's going on, and Tyson Fury and the heavyweights. I don't know as much about the other weights. And you're more MMA. So that's why we get Ben on to give us a real boxing perspective.
It's intriguing listening to the guy, and he's kind of reignited the passion to follow boxing a little bit more deeper now. Partly because we've got to research about these fighters and stuff. But it's been an eye opener. I actually recently added Ben on my Facebook and get to follow a little bit what he's doing. He literally lives and breathes boxing.
Yeah, he puts a lot of good debates, questions, puts debates up.
Yeah, and he's very, very engaging. If you write comments on anything, like he goes to events and then people ask his opinion about things, or sometimes put their opinions against him, and he's always got time to articulate himself very, very well on the reasons why he has the opinions about things, and then starts, of course, firing off stats that you wonder where the hell he drags them up from. Yeah. But super cool guy. I'm so glad to have got to have met him through this podcast.
So because I've got to finish sort of bang on 9:30 tonight, if not just a little bit after, we're going to kind of fly through last night's UFC, mate. What I think we'll do is we'll go do fight by fight, but I'll just kind of leave it to you. I'll kind of
no problem at all.
I'll just sort of say the result, and and the fight, and then leave the sort of quick,
Yeah.
quick little general thing from you. It doesn't have to be blow
Yeah.
by blow, but just a quick thing. So the first fight on the main card was Makhmed Ankhalov defeating Volkan Ozdemir by unanimous decision. I was looking forward to this fight, I have to say.
Yeah, and this one, because I knew we was obviously going to come to this, and this is the only one I couldn't get. It comes up with this. It comes up with that, and I was unable to get it to play. So that one, I'm going to have to go with the fact that that was the decision, and the rest of them I can comment on.
Yeah, I think
I'm just a slave with MMA share because I don't have that UFC fight pass, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I should perhaps get it.
It was from what I saw, it was a very, very like an interesting fight, worth watching. The next one was
I will when I can.
The next fight was so fascinating; it's unreal. We had number 11 ranked Li Jiangli versus Khamzat Chimaev. Everybody thought that this was the fighter which was going to give Chimaev, maybe trip Chimaev up because he's so well-rounded. He's a real good fighter, ranked 11. Better than anything, I would say, that he's come up against so far. People thought that maybe the height and things like this might obviously come into it, but Chimaev mauled him, mate, and got the rear naked choke. 3 minutes again in round one. Do we have to accept that he's the real deal now?
Well, it is the real deal, but it'd be interesting to see him go up against someone who's a really accomplished wrestler. Jiangling is not known for his wrestling. He's more of a, willing to stand in your face and fight, so to speak. But doing that against a skillful wrestler,
he's good.
And someone
Li Jiangling, he's not a bad wrestler, and he's a good grappler.
Yeah,
he's got the skills.
I don't think he comes
to do something.
It doesn't come. It doesn't come with like hardcore credentials, in that aspect. And it would never be his go-to to wrestle up too often. I think initially he's predominantly in favour of his striking. Chimaev just dismantled him easy. I just want to see Chimaev tested against someone who's more pedigreed in terms of wrestling that can also bang someone. Actually see what this guy's got when he's pushed to adversity, at least physically. I'm not saying, let's see what happens when he gets hurt and rocked, see how he reacts. I mean, just to see him go into latter rounds with someone that can actually trade with him skill on skill a little bit more. But, we keep on repeating, and we can't help but say it, you can only fight what you got in front of you. And every time he has done that, he's dismantled them for fun. I mean, I doubt if he breaks into a sweat.
When he lifted him
and
slammed him, he had him in the air, and he was talking to Dana White at ringside.
I think when he got hands on Jiangling, he felt that he didn't have the technical know-how to recover the position, and he knew he had full and total and utter control. And
to me,
it was very dominant.
They have to put him up against Li Jiangli is ranked 11. They have to put Chimaev up against a wrestler from the top 5 to me, because otherwise, what are you building him up for? Because they promote him more than any other fighter I've seen in a long time for someone who's unranked.
Yeah.
And I think I said to you, I can't think it was off air, but I said to you a few months ago, how they're promoting Chimaev is how I wish they'd promote Jack Shaw.
Yeah.
Because I think if they gave Jack the same opportunities, Jack would do the similar, he would keep winning and he'd keep impressing people. I mean it from that. I know that.
And I think it's because the club on the world stage is relatively still not known. He's predominantly trained by his father, along with some great coaches and competitors that he has training alongside him. Of course, we know how well accomplished the gym is. But I think it's largely because of that. Obviously, Chimaev has got a background with Habib and so on and so forth, so it comes with natural trajectory there, and I think that's the reason why we're seeing that. And Chimaev is kind of a bit of a character.
Meerschaert, who everyone he thought was going to be his, the undoing of him, and he knocked him out in 17 seconds.
Yeah,
so he's shown he's
getting it done.
Hands.
And you know what? The guy is a really good guy. I was fortunate enough to meet him when I was at in Yas Island, Fight Island, and he had time for everyone that wanted pictures with him, smiling, really enjoying his attention. Some fighters, they get a bit tired of it and they sort of duck and dive anyone that wants to take pictures with them. But yeah, he seemed to be really relishing it. Great personality, real good guy. Got total amount of respect for his fighting capabilities as well as him as a person. For the short exposure that I've had of him, real friendly, nice guy. I think he's in UFC to make impacts. He's in there to stay. And yes, I think people in that division and in the division up, I think he could be a potential two-weight fight champion potentially from what we're seeing. I know he's not turning his nose up at fighting in either or weight categories. He's fought over 2 weights, I believe. This guy's going to make impacts without a doubt. I don't doubt that. I just want to see what his responses are tactically, strategically, when he's got someone that he can't just bowl over, completely dominate in such a way that he's willing to have a conversation with Dana White as he does so.
Well, here's a question for you very, very quickly. In the welterweight division, which is where he fought Li Zhangli, above Li Zhangli, you've got Jeff Neal, Bel Mohammed, Neil Magny, George Masvidal, Michael Chiesa, Stephen Thompson, Vincent Luque, Leon Edwards, Gilbert Burns, and Colby Covington, and then obviously Usman's the champ.
Yeah,
Neil Magny, I think
Neil Magny, I think that'd be interesting because he's creative. He's got some explosivity in his body to maybe wiggle out of some of these difficult early engagements. Yeah, I think he would test him more. I think he'll certainly be able to get out the first round. And that's the kind of thing I want to see. I want to see what happens when he goes back to his stall and gets back up and has to go back in with a little bit of tiredness in the body and maybe a few conundrums to figure out with himself over his opponent along with his fight team, see how they will respond.
Indeed, mate. Next, then we had Volkov versus Tybura, with Volkov getting the unanimous decision.
Yeah, he got the nod, and wow, we saw Volkov do a takedown in round 1, which was, it's not something that we'll ever get used to seeing, I'm sure. As we know, Volkov's extremely tall, 6'7", I think he is, and a world-class striker. Don't expect for him to do takedowns. Whenever he did get a takedown on Tybura, Tybura really impresses me, though. This is a guy that has impressed me for some time on a nice little win streak as well, wasn't he? But, he's been stopped in his tracks now, but not so convincingly. I think this fight could have actually gone either way because he was making Volkov footwork and backtrack away. And I've always said it, I really like Tybura's way that he defends. If he could just add in a little bit of a squat into his position. I know he's light heavyweight and heavyweight, they're up in the heavier realms of the weight divisions. But it'd be nice if he just squatted down just a teeny bit. And then along with that squatted stance as he comes forward, he'd be less tall. And would be able to create, would be able to create a little bit of head movement as he comes in with that nice tight defense he's got. But I definitely like his hand positioning in the MMA perspective of defending shots. But he is just a little bit tall. He stands a little bit tall, and I think it takes off a little bit too much pep off of his strikes. It makes him less impactful and makes him a little easier perhaps to be taken down, which I think was a surprise to me with Volkov. But Volkov's got those long arms, long legs. He could easily get a surprise trip on you. And also, I think where Tybura was standing so tall, which I think is something that he's got to create for the reasons I said for his striking, but also if he wants to strike to clinch like he was, which I think was a great game plan, he had to stick a level drop in it. And it's so hard to level drop when you're already standing so tall, so straight. So, yeah, I just want to see him figure out his stance a little bit more in terms of his leg positioning, to sit down off on his hips a little bit more, so he has a little bit more shoot and impact, a little bit more level change as he comes forward. Then he'll be mixing in the potentiality for takedowns along with those forward coming strikes for that tight defense that he displays.
Indeed, mate, full on. And then next up was Islam Makhachev, ranked number 5, versus Dan Hooker, ranked number 6. Dan Hooker is an absolute warrior, and I'm glad.
He is a great fighter. A great fighter, but Islam is just looking stronger and better and more comfortable. He seems to have a process to winning, the same as Khabib did. He just does the same sort of thing. I think he's a little bit better, maybe striking wise than we saw Khabib. He relied solely on his wrestling capabilities. I think Islam can trade the punches and kicks as needed to, but I think Dan Hooker he likes to fight on the fence or off the fence with his footwork and striking. And the thing is, if you give forward trajectory to any of these Russian style wrestlers, you're going to have terrible trouble with their strike to entry because they've got that trajectory to go forward. I think if you're going to stand any chance against these Russian wrestle stylists, MMAists, you have to push them back with the striking. You've got to not even stand your ground. You've got to edge them back. And to do that, you've got to have that tight type of defense that I was saying that I like about Tybura's game, with a little bit of squat down on it and really load into it with these strikes. Get them going backwards, and then that way they don't have that trajectory to take you down. And that way you'll be able to prepare for those entries, for the shoots, in that when you know you're pressing them back and pressing them forward, you've got to expect them to therefore try to take you down. They don't want to have a kickboxing match. They want to win by getting you to the ground and smothering on your ground, rather getting an outright win there, or keep on taking the rounds away from you to get it on the judge's decision. You know, it's a difficult puzzle to crack, but I don't think anyone's going to crack it unless they take center stage in that cage and move these wrestlers backwards, so that their trajectory to come forward is a little bit more obvious and they get stuffed more often. And then we're going to push them into deeper water physically, because they'll have to grind the second and third entry to try to get where they want to get, and of course the heart rate starts to spike then, and I think you'll see them succeed less. Until someone does that, it ain't going to happen. And unfortunately, Dan Hooker's game is not designed to take center stage in the cage. He's happy to fight going backwards, and predominantly that's worked for him, but against that stylist it's never going to work in my mind.
Shot, mate. So we talked about Jan and Sandhagen. Really got to wrap up, mate. So let's just talk Glover Teixeira versus Jan Blachowicz, with Glover Teixeira taking the win to become the new champion.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I like to brag about me getting it right. You know, I was right about Chimaev. I was right about Islam winning, and I was also right about Glover. And you know, Glover was a difficult one to pick for many because of his age. You know, 42 years old. Dan Blachowicz not young either. You know, he's 38 years old, but I think still largely in his prime. You know, being the prospective weight division that they're in, and Jan is amazing, a real complete fighter, more so complete than Glover, I would arguably say. I just think Glover's just got those areas where he's that little bit better in, that I think, you know, if it was going to come to an early stoppage, Glover was going to get it. And I think if it was going to go into later rounds, I think the overall complete style of punching and kicking, that kickboxing style that Blachowicz brings, I think he would have slowly dissolved Teixeira. But Teixeira did it. He got that early takedown in round one, and that was so important. I think if it didn't happen that way, we would have been seeing Jan with his hand lifted up. But Glover got him down decisively in that first round, was able to take enough out of Jan to be able to get him down to the ground in that second round as well, and perform excellent ground and pound and an excellent choke finish. He kind of like just stuffed the fight and willpower out of Blachowicz. Really, really impressive. So happy for him. And look, we've mentioned about age numerous times. You know, to do it at 42 years old, what an amazing accomplishment. How long he's going to stay around to stay champion, you know, that's all down to Father Time. I don't think it's anything detrimental to his fighting skills. We've clearly seen that they're there, and they're there to get it to the top of the game. But Father Time will come knocking at his door, unfortunately for him. So whether it be reigning champion for any length of time, only time will tell.
Indeed, mate, indeed. So that's us for this evening, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate everyone who's tuned in to watch at the various times. Of course, appreciate Jordan finding the time to speak to us, and of course Ben finding the time to speak to us. Please spread the word about the show, and of course download the audio version of the Sports Social page, which will be out probably in the morning now, because I've got to go pick my son up. But guys, I'll be back tomorrow with a new episode of Me, Myself and I. So join me 7:30 Monday night, tomorrow night. Subscribe to everything, follow everything. I appreciate you all. Danny, it's a pleasure as always, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan, Ben, Sight. Awesome week's podcasting.
Sorted.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The champion, welcome, Danny Batten.
Yeah.